tell you this was the episode that completely blew my mind, it blew my mind.
I'm living my best life. Made a couple M's with my best friends. Turned all my L's in the last.
Sorry if the lighting is a little bit off. I'm using my ring light because it is super gloomy and raining out. So anyway, I wanted to get into episode 2 of the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. The episode was titled Person of Interest. And guys, when I tell you this was the episode that completely blew my mind, it blew my mind. This episode changed everything for me. This episode basically talked about how relentless the media was, how journalists just basically was trying to get everything that happened in the story, how they were very strong in the case, how they were very close to the case, how they would walk around and kind of talk to different residents of the city and kind of ask them like what was the city like and did they see anything, and or did the McCanns look suspicious, or they kind of went around. They were very, very, very overbearing, not just to the McCanns, but also to a lot of the residents as well. So many journalists was filling the area. So many people were starting to come in that the residents kind of felt out of place. They started to feel uneasy in their own home. The episode starts with Robert Hall, who is the senior correspondent for the BBC. He brought up a good point, which was basically this girl was stolen, essentially, and nobody seen anything. Nobody seen where she went, or nobody could identify her. Nobody could say, I seen a guy carrying her, or I see a woman carrying her. Nobody knew nothing. Nobody seen nothing. And he basically talked about how strange that was, how uncommon that was, and kind of how unheard of that was. Another good point that he brought up was how could anybody know that the kids were in there alone? It was a big hotel. It was a big, almost like apartments. How did somebody know that that specific apartment would have kids in there that were unattended? How would they know when the parents were coming back unless they were being watched? If we stick with this theory that the kids were taken, the kids would have had to have been being watched. That's the only way that the person would have known, okay, this is the time the kids are left in there unattended. This is the time the kids are alone. And the third good point that he brought up is how would this person be able to essentially steal one kid without waking up the other kids? Like I said, her brother and her sister, they were twins, were sleeping in the same room. So how could this person steal Madeleine without waking the other kids or even alerting the other kids? Even if the person did take Madeleine, I'm pretty sure she would have screamed or yelled or did something that would wake the other kids. The episode then starts to get into the journalists and how relentless they were, and how they were kind of like a ominous cloud looming over the city. Like they kind of followed the story everywhere. They would harass the residents. They made the residents feel uneasy and out of place in their own home. And they just kind of question everything and everybody. They kept pushing, and in a sense, I guess they were trying to help. I guess they wanted to help, but it was causing more unease among the residents than anything. At first, everybody kind of said the same thing. Nobody saw anything. Nobody saw anything out of the unusual. Nobody saw anything that kind of stuck out that would make you say, that kind of doesn't look right. And then as time went on, as the media kept pushing, more and more people started to come out and say stuff. Something that was brought up was, I guess, somebody seen an egg-shaped head with no defining features and hair. The media took that and they ran with it. They published it all over, even though there was nothing really distinctful about it. Even though there was nothing to say, okay, the person had blue eyes or green eyes or was black or white. All they could say is that they seen an egg-shaped face with hair. This is where the episode kind of starts to get into talking about the police and how the police were just kind of not doing their job. And it did not blame the police themselves, but more so that at this time that this happened, this was a very big tourist time. There were a lot of people and not enough police officers to help with these people. And again, this was like unheard of. This doesn't happen all the time. People going missing in this town does not happen all the time. So the police staff were not equipped to work with this. The police staff was not equipped to kind of do everything that they needed to do. Not only were the police not able to do everything that they needed to do or everything that they were expected to do, they were slowly releasing bits of information to the media, and the media was slowly releasing those bits of information to the public. So the public was feeling like the police weren't doing a good job, or any job really, because they really weren't getting a lot of information from the media. They really weren't getting a lot of information at all. According to the documentary, this was also around the time that Jane Tanner, which is a family friend of the McCanns, had also stated that she seen a male carrying a young child. The child seemed to look like Madeleine, but she wasn't sure if it was Madeleine. She had the same type of pajamas Madeleine had on, and he was carrying her kind of like this, kind of holding her. She said that she thought it was weird that to basically hold a child like that. She had never seen a child held like that, and it was around the time that they were guessing that Madeleine had went missing. So this kind of sent the media into a frenzy. This sent the police into a frenzy. Everybody kind of went into this frenzy. But at the same time, it wasn't enough information to really get the ball rolling in the way the McCanns had hoped. And this is where we start to see the McCanns kind of go from having this faith and trust in the police to starting to go to the media. They're starting to do more interviews. They're starting to talk to more of the media and put more information out here. And this is where they did something that for me was kind of questionable. The police had told them Madeleine had a specific black streak in her eye. It was very specific, it was very particular, and they told her, hey, do not mention this detail, mainly because it's not something you would automatically notice looking at her, but it was a noticeable feature. So if you noticed it was there, if you publish this, it is essentially a death mark, because it is something very distinctful to her. It's like if you have a birthmark on your face. If you go missing, that birthmark is on your face. It may seem like something that's small that maybe the kidnapper may not have realized in that moment, but if people are publishing this at this point, her mom and her parents were publishing shirts and flyers and posters talking about this black streak in her eye. They were saying over and over again, look for the black streak, look for the black streak, look for the black streak. So even as a kidnapper, if you took this child and you did not notice that she had this streak in her eye, it's being pushed so much that you'll say, wait, she does. This is a very distinctful feature. And the police were basically calling it a death mark. And that's the main reason why they told her not to release that she had this mark, because it kind of made Madeleine a target. It would kind of change her from being just a child in the case, whatever was happening, to more specifically being a target. It would put her at risk for being killed. And they kind of took no regard for what the police had to say and released the information anyway. Why they did this, I don't know. I don't know if it was because they lacked the trust in the police, if the police knew what they were talking about, or if it was because of something else. This episode really left my mind in a boggle, because everything that I thought I had knew about this case, everything that I had trusted, and I went into this case knowing, this episode blew everything up, blew all of that. So although it did take a while for the police to really hit the ground running, by day 6, I would definitely say they were in full force. They were running, they had help, they had bought in something like 150, 160 extra officers from all around. The people in the community were volunteering, people in the community wanted to help. So it's like, not only did the police have the help of the police force, but they also had the help of outside agencies. They also had the help of the community. They also had the help of family and friends. And it became this big community thing. The entire community wanted to find Madeleine, the whole entire community. And this is where we see Robert Marat come in. Robert Marat was this man who was in his mid-30s, who had put himself in the case and was a very big driving force of the case. He helped the police with everything. He talked with journalists, he helped them search areas. He was very invested in this case. He started off as a translator. Slowly him translating kind of morphed into him somewhat being the police's right-hand man. He kind of always went to the police and the journalists and kind of checked in with them almost daily, kind of figuring out like what's going on, what's happening, where you guys, have you found anything. He was very a driving part in the investigation at first, and his mother was right there with him. His mother, Jenny Marat, she would kind of set up posts wherever he was, and she would sell these t-shirts with Madeleine's face on them, and basically she would just push and spread awareness about what was going on. And on the tables where she would sell the t-shirts, she would actually have a plain piece of paper where people can come and anonymously write tips. They didn't have to leave a name or phone number or anything. They can come and anonymously write if they had seen anything or if they had been the person who took her. The Marat's involvement kind of started to be questioned over time, not so much Jenny Marat but Robert. People kind of started looking at Robert like he was out of place. He was so invested in this case and so close to this case, and really, like I said, just wanted to know every single detail that was going on in this case, that a lot of people, more specifically journalists, started to kind of question that something was off about him. They would kind of tell the police that he gave them a weird feeling in the pit of their stomach. They would just basically talk to police and hound into them that something was not right with this guy. Why was he so close to the case? What was going on? He had lived with his mom. People thought that that was strange. They kind of felt like, why does a 30-year-old man live with his mom? A specific journalist, Lori Campbell, was kind of the main push for what happens next to Marat that would change his life forever. Lori Campbell basically pushed to the police that Robert was weird. Something was off about him. Something about him gave her pause, and she pushed this so much to the police kind of started to see it. I'm going to pause here and quickly talk about an earlier case just so you guys can have some perspective about what was going on. There was two young girls that had went missing, Jessica and Holly. They had went missing, kind of like vanished, kind of similar to Madeleine, and they were young. They were young. They were 8, I believe, either 8 or 9, and they had went missing. A young man by the name of Ian Huntley had inserted himself into the case, was helping with everything, was working side by side with police, was helping with searches. And this young man actually turned out to be the culprit. He actually turned out to be the one that kidnapped these girls and murdered them. So the both of them. So this kind of gives you a setup for why a lot of people started to become suspicious of Robert. People kind of felt like it was the same thing. A young girl had went missing and he was interjecting himself so heavily into this case. Not only that, I will see if I can find a picture so I can insert it. Not only that, but he lived very close to the resort and the Tapas bar. So people also thought that was strange. They felt like here was this young man who still lived with his mom. Not even young man. Here was this older midlife gentleman who still lived with his mom, that still for the most part depended on his mom. At the time he was going through a divorce. He had a young daughter. They lived in Britain, or the UK. So they thought that was strange as well. They were like, well, this man is getting a divorce. He lives with his mom. He's in his mid-30s. He is a kid around Madeleine's age. So they all felt like all this was strange. He lived close to the resort. They pushed so hard. Lori Campbell pushed so hard that finally the police did declare him a suspect, and something more stronger than the suspect. In Portugal, they have a specific word for people that is stronger than a person of interest, but not really a full-blown suspect to the way we know it, and it's called aguidos, I think is the way they pronounced it. It's called aguidos. So basically, if you're a aguido, you're stronger than a person of interest. It's like the police are really looking at you and they're like, yeah, we think you did it, but there's not enough evidence for you to become a full-blown suspect yet. Once they declared Robert Marat an aguido, this is where things kind of changed from a very harmonious, helpful relationship with the police to a very hostile relationship. He talked about in the documentary how the police called him on the phone and they were like, hey, we need help on this particular case. Can you get down to the station now? He was like, sure, hopped out of bed, got dressed, and when he went downstairs, the police were there and raided his house. Literally right then, right there. Raided his house. He talked about kind of how devastating that was and how he felt betrayed in a sense. He felt like all of this was basically off the word of other people. He felt like he had been helpful to the case. He had lent his hand. He had lent all this time, and basically for police to kind of throw that back in his face. The police did not just look at Robert Marat, they looked at everybody he was ever in contact with, his friends, his family, his business colleagues. They looked at everybody they felt like could be a suspect. And one of the people they landed on and really zoomed in on is his friend slash kind of a co-worker, Sergio Paolo. Sergio Paolo was a Russian immigrant whose family basically moved to give him a fresh start. They moved to find more economic success, just success in general. And when they moved, Sergio said in the documentary that he told himself as a child, I'm going to make better of myself. I'm going to be better of myself. So one thing he did when he got older is he started his own computer business, kind of sort of like graphic design. He made websites and ads and different things like that for people. And that's kind of how he knew Robert Marat, he said, is because he worked on his website. He said the only contact they ever had was business related. It was never personal. They were never personal friends. It was just business colleagues, basically. He worked on his website and came to him. Robert came to him whenever he needed any work done computer-wise. One thing that I found weird in the documentary when they questioned Sergio Paolo is Sergio's place had also been raided. The way that he talks about it in the documentary is definitely very traumatizing, especially because him and Robert only have, according to him, a business relationship. That is extremely traumatizing. And this is the point where this case literally blew my mind and everything that I ever thought of. The interviewer asked Sergio, when the police raided Sergio's place, they had took some hard drives, some external drives, some CD-ROMs, just a bunch of computer stuff. Now, Sergio said when they took this stuff, he had been working on different things for clients, and that not all the stuff that they confiscated was his. A lot of the stuff, according to him, allegedly, was his clients and was stuff that he was working on. So with that being said, please keep that in mind, because the next thing I'm going to say is very, to me, it doesn't really sit right to me. Apparently the hard drives and CD-ROMs that they took, I guess some stuff was deleted off of them, or some stuff tried to be deleted, but the police were still able to recover some of the stuff, a lot of the stuff. Now, at this point, the interviewer asked Sergio. The interviewer says, basically, would you like to talk about the stuff that police claim were found on this hard drive and on these CDs? And Sergio makes it very clear. He says very clearly that he doesn't want to talk about it. And the interviewer kind of questions him, why? And he says because he'd rather not talk about it. And this part is the part that blew my mind. The interviewer kind of let Sergio know that, well, basically, what they recovered off of these hard drives and CDs was pornography. That's basically what he says. And it blew my mind because that is such a broad term. It's such a broad term, and it could mean anything. And I feel like if it was regular adult videos like that, like pornography, I don't think that it would have been as much of a big deal. Whereas if it was child pornography, that would be very big of a deal. And it would go even with the fact that a young girl was missing. The police was already suspecting Robert Marat had something to do with it, and now these tapes are found in your home. So they kind of didn't talk about that anymore. They just basically stated what was found, and you could tell it kind of made him uncomfortable. And then that's when he says, yet again, now all those tapes were mine. Now all that stuff was mine. Now all those CD-ROMs was mine. That hard drive wasn't mine. Like, he was just basically pushing, again, this idea that because he runs his computer business, a lot of times he gets stuff that's not his, and he was saying, like, the police basically don't know what's mine and what's not, and which is very true. But I do think that it is very coincidental that he had that at his home. Madeleine was missing. He's somewhat connected to Robert Marat. Robert Marat lives so close to the resort. Robert Marat did interject himself into this case. And again, that is not unheard of for a suspect to interject themselves into the case, especially if they are a certain type of suspect, especially if they like that feeling of kind of like, I know more than you. Not only that, they like to know if police are getting any closer to them, if they're suspecting them, because if so, they like to redirect that attention. So that is not unheard of in Robert Marat. For Robert Marat to basically be a suspect and for Robert Marat to basically inject himself into this case, to basically help with it, but really redirect where police are looking. That paired with the fact that apparently there was a late night phone call between the two around the time Madeleine would have gone missing, or had been missing, and both of them are like, oh, well, we don't recall this call. And it was there. Like, the police had it there on the phone record, and then questioned both Marat about it and Sergio, and both of them said, we don't remember this call. We don't know what this call was about because we don't remember it. Sergio said maybe it was something business related. Like, they both just said they don't remember the call. And Robert Marat specifically said, I never said the call didn't happen. I just said I don't remember it. And I think that is strange, that this call happened around the time this young girl would have gone missing. You live so close to it. Like, all this stuff that the documentary kind of pieced together, it did look weird, and it kind of did change my perspective on this case and my outlook on this case. Guys, I am really excited to get into episode 3. I can't wait to get on here and talk to you guys about it. Comment down below, how do you feel about the documentary so far? If you're watching it, it is on Netflix, so please, if you guys can, check it out, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.